Yeah.
Okay. Let's do some super quick housekeeping because we've not had a live call before, and then we'll crack on. So it's coming up 12:15. We've got an hour together, so I'm not going to say, oh, we've only got till 1 o'clock because I wasn't here. So I apologize for that. We will have a conversation today. I am recording it for you, as I've mentioned. I won't share anything that you talk with me today with anyone else without your express permission. If I ever have a conversation more generally about I've got a family who, if I'm helping another family with something, to use a comparison, I won't ever identify you. And the only exception to that rule would be if you shared something with me today that gave me the impression that a child, a young person, or a vulnerable adult was in clear and immediate danger. My safeguarding trigger is Kate Jones. She's my safeguarding lead, and if I needed to, I would have a conversation with her first and foremost. It's never happened, but just so you know, that's what the process is.
Okay.
You can have recordings of anything that we've got. If you ask for anything, I can give you all of my records that I've got for you. And if you want me to delete anything or just tell me to delete it all, I can and I will. I only keep what I need for cases whilst they're active with me.
Okay.
I'm not a solicitor, I'm not a barrister, I'm not a medical professional. The conversation we have is on the understanding that you know that.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay, I'm covered. Right. Brilliant. So I've got your paperwork. I've had a quick look over it, but I thought we should have a really good chat really about what you want to get out of our time together. I started doing some documents for you, but I wanted to touch base with you first before I gave that back to you to be sure that it's got the right angle and it's covering what you need it to cover.
Sure.
So what do you want to achieve today? Like, what do you feel like you need to get out of your head into my head, or out of my head into your head?
I think, to be honest, the first step for us is that we know a couple of parents with PDA children, but we're only a year in terms of the presenting itself to the point at which school became an issue. And Casper only started refusing to go to school in March because his sister had refused to go to school. And so his equalising, his sense of injustice, etc., kicked in, and he said, she's had 4 days off, I hate school, I should have 4 days off. Prior to that, his very rigid black and white thinking meant that he went to school because that's what children do. And I think I mentioned that it came up in the OT report in December that he put going to school at a level 10. That was the first inkling we had. So we knew he didn't like big groups. We knew he didn't like going to birthday parties, for example, but he'd never really given us a sense of hating school that much. But what we'd noticed is since last summer through to December, which is why the OT came in, that he was coming back from school really dysregulated. And at the kind of first inkling of that kind of September, I was thinking, is this ADHD? I'm not quite sure. We hadn't gone down the so I didn't even know about PDA, but we hadn't gone down the autistic kind of diagnostic track, even though we'd wondered, because every time I'd asked the teachers up to that point, they kept going, oh no, that's just Casper, he's shy, or that's just Casper, he's quiet, or that's just Casper, he's, you know. So we had, and my sister also had asked the question, and now I know a lot more, but we didn't. So I think today it would be really helpful to get a sense of, I mean, we know the statistic that 70% of PDA children are not in school, etc. And I think for me, it's looking back over the summer term, where the start up to May half term, we were taking him in every day and he was traumatized and it was awful, but we didn't know any better than listening to the school. And at that point he did have his autism diagnosis, but I, again, hadn't really taken on the PDA. I had talked to them about PDA and they had added it into the report. So we did have it in the diagnostic report. But I think at that point, I was still trusting that the Senko at school knew what she was doing, which I now know is not the case. So we were doing what they were suggesting, which is getting him to school, handing him over, we can deal with it. Once he's in school, we know what we're dealing with. But what we saw by May half term, so that was about, well, let's say 5 weeks, but not every day by any means. We weren't getting him in every day. We weren't getting him in for full days, but he did have a teacher he really trusted, who I think is autistic herself. So I think she just really got him and got how to deal with him and was really helping him. She was brilliant with him. And the problem really arose because she was a maternity cover. She'd been with them a year and she'd transitioned him from the small school to the big the kind of senior school, which was year 3 and up.
Mm-hmm.
And so she'd done I think she'd done half a term with them at the end of year 2 in this really small, cozy building. And then she'd brought them into year 3, and she'd done the whole of year 3 with them all the way through to May half term. And then the maternity cover ended and she was gone, and they didn't transition her with the children very well at all. There wasn't, you know, a farewell party, a thank you very much, goodbye, etc. It was just simply, this is Mrs. Luke's last day, say goodbye.
Right.
So it was done really, really badly. And at that point, I started soul searching, and we knew he was going back to a new teacher who he knew his sister had, but he didn't, and he knew her, but didn't know her as his own teacher, as it were.
Yeah.
And she's lovely, but she's only done about 2 to 3 years worth of teaching, and she doesn't have very much experience with autistic children and has 0 experience with PDA children. So by end of May half term, I said to Nick agreed, I can't, you know, and I've done child psychology training, and I was like, I can't traumatize this child any further. So we took the view that he'll go in if he goes in, and he won't go in if he doesn't. And he basically, I'd say he made it in maybe a couple of hours here and there at the beginning, and then absolutely nothing from June through to July, didn't go in at all. And the school didn't bat an eyelid. No one contacted us. No one was asking what was going on. No one was contacting the LA, luckily, but no one was contacting social services to say this child's at home, we don't know what's going on. There was no communication at all with us till the last week of term. And then suddenly it was like, oh, we should have a meeting about why Casper's not in school. So I think we've been on this journey where we've been trying to get him in school. It's clear to us now, I don't think this school can meet his needs. Nick and I are pretty clear on that. We thought if he had the one-to-one from September, if by half term they'd made it back into the classroom and that he was able to be in the classroom with his trusted one-to-one by his side, that would be different. But he hasn't. I think I mentioned to you, he made it in last week. He actually quite enjoyed, once he was in the classroom with her, he seemed to quite enjoy being there. He didn't do much, he just watched. Mm-hmm. But he said to her, when are we doing this again? But then yesterday when I tried to take him in for the next sort of attempt at this, he was really dysregulated, very anxious. He was pulling me out the front door saying, Mummy, I've told you, the more you bring me here, the more I hate this school. I hate it. I'm not coming back. So there's a kind of war going on within him in terms of some tiny part of him feeling like this could be quite fun, or he quite likes seeing his friends. He is sociable. He does like his friends. He wants to hang out with his friends. But at the moment, the more the demand coming from school, the more the PDA is going absolutely boom. I can't see anyone want to do anything.
Yeah.
And I think I feel like we're at such an early stage in our understanding of PDA. I mean, I have read all the books and done all the, the deep dive, but you have much more experience with this than us. And that 70% keeps ringing in my ears, but equally, it's a tiny little independent prep school. It's not a big mainstream primary. And my concern with a special school is you go from a big mainstream primary into a special school, and it's different because it's smaller and it's, there's more kind of focused attention, etc., etc. But right now, effectively, it's almost like we've set up a special school for him. He's in an LS room by himself with a one-to-one. He still won't engage.
Yeah.
He goes in. If there's something really fun on the table when we arrive in the morning, he will stay. But 20% of the time, he'll do that without me. 70%, 80% of the time, I have to be in the school still. He won't stay. A couple of times, something really exciting has been on the table and he's got really into it. And he's like, absolutely, he's there 2.5 hours, he's fine. But it's trying to keep that level of engagement for him. So for me at the moment, I'm just thinking, like, I know the LA won't see it this way in the EHC process, but I feel like for this term, we've built him a special school. He's been going to an LS room by himself with a one-to-one. He's been having all of that focused attention. He's been able to literally steer self-directed learning in that sense. Like, she'll have something on the table, but equally, if he wants to do something else, she just goes with it.
Yeah.
And he still won't engage.
He still can't do it. Yeah.
But I do, and I wonder, like, there's a lot of other stuff, like there's the SPD side, so he'll go in and if the room's just been cleaned as an issue, so we took in a lavender spray. He's got a spray he can spray the room with. They've got him a really nice comfy chair that he can sit in that he retreats to quite a lot, big armchair. But I still think, you know, you put him in a special school environment, there's still going to be sensory stuff going on. There's still going to be other children. There's still going to be other teachers. To my mind, I feel like this experiment this term hasn't been just trying to get him back into school. It's been, can he actually manage any school?
Yeah. Yeah, really common experience for lots of PDA families, what you're describing. And the other challenge with special schools is that for many of our PDAs, they're just not appropriate in terms of the level of what's the word I'm looking for? They're not appropriate for them in terms of the level of intelligent interaction that they can have. Like, not to say that their peers aren't intelligent, but you don't get other PDAs in special school settings because they're either in mainstream masked and managing, or they're not in school. So there aren't many PDAs in specialist settings. So because of that, there isn't always a suitable peer group. And because of that, they end up frustrated because they're not properly stimulated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, and what you were describing about when you were saying about him saying that he's very sociable, that's forever the poison chalice of PDA, is that our PDAs are so significantly challenged by demands and, you know, what people call rigid thinking. I call it being right, but whatever. But you know, they're so challenged by that, but they equally are incredibly sociable creatures, and finding a place where both of those needs can be met is super challenging, and that's why so many PDAs aren't in school. So, yeah, I think that your hunch here is probably pretty accurate, that school isn't right for him.
And
now I suppose the next thing is, okay, so given that we know that, first of all, how do we evidence it? And secondly, what is right for him? They're the two questions, I guess. How is he generally? Like, how's his mental health?
I'd say what we see is a happy child when there are no demands, which is what we see like when he's in the car. And Nick had evidence of this too. I see it, I think, a little bit more, but Nick had evidence of this also when we were driving back from Scotland, where both children in the back of the car, so happy, having the best chat about whether if they moved planet Earth to Mars, if planet Earth was failing and we had to move to Mars, you know, what would they take with them? And it started like which animals and what you'd need for the food. So they'd want cheese, so cows would have to go and all that kind of thing. And then it was like, but we'll need to move the continent of Africa because there's so much good stuff going on in Africa. We'll need to move the whole continent of Africa to Mars. And it was such a happy, intelligent, inspired, inquisitive conversation going on. And it went on for about an hour and a half. And Nick and I were just listening to it in the front of the car, just going, this is just amazing. It's like gold. And so what I see with both children, because they do feed off each other, Layla's autistic. I'm less convinced it's PDA. There's definite demand, a huge demand avoidance going on. I just don't know yet if it's Casper level. But what we see is this kind of rhythm of the more the demand of school is sitting there, the unhappier they are, the more anxious they are. Casper, if he's left to his own devices, he's so happy. So Nick studies next to where our family room is with the TV where they do the gaming. And Nick loves just sitting in there listening to them because they are so funny together and they're so happy when they're gaming that I would say they're not depressed because they're not in a depression all the time. But when the demand of school is there, both of them, but including Casper, are low, anxious, stressed, dysregulated, all of that.
Yeah.
I think there's a stress in the house. Layla's more prone to very dramatic meltdowns compared to Casper. So Casper will trash his room, and it happened this morning. And there's a lot that happened this morning because I'm in London. And our communications kind of dropped. So lots happened, not Casper's fault, but he trashed his room. But it's much less usual for him. He was having a lot of meltdowns before we understood what was going on with him. But because we changed our management of him on the basis of diagnosis, understanding PDA, dropping all the demands, proper low demand household and all that. If school isn't there in the background, they are super happy, although the PDA is still there for sure. Just much less obvious. And the sort of, you know, it's like we went on holiday. So at the beginning of the holidays, it probably took them about 10 days to 2 weeks to really relax into the summer holidays. And then we got into that middle bit of the summer holidays where he was happy Yes, he still wants to be on a screen a lot, but that's his regulation thing. But he equally would do other stuff too with us. And, you know, it just depended if we balanced things right or not. So he'd go to the beach with us, but he wouldn't want to go the next day because then he needs a rest day. And he's made it very clear, I'll do something with you, but the next day I need a rest. I want to be on a screen for a whole day. Then I'll do something else with you the next day. Then I want to be on a screen. So, you know, he's very good at telling us what he needs. So I'd say take school out of the equation, the anxiety levels would drop considerably. They wouldn't be zero.
Yeah.
And there's definite social anxiety in terms of strangers or groups of people.
Sure.
But in terms of other children, he's pretty clear at the moment he only wants to see his friends on a one-to-one basis. We made the mistake that last year, incredibly, and I can't understand it looking back, he wanted a Laser Quest party. He loves Laser Quest. And he literally wanted the whole year group. So it was like 30 children at Laser Quest, all running with their lasers. And he absolutely loved it. And there's another thing he loves doing, which is driving this little electric car around a circuit when we go to Scotland. And so I kind of thought, oh, go-karting, that'll be fun. And I arranged a go-karting party with his friend who's the same birthday week as him. And it absolutely terrified him. He went into full dysregulation, meltdown, violence towards me. He was really upset I'd ruined his birthday, and it was just awful. And then we went to Pizza Express afterwards. He didn't do any of the go-karting. He was just attacking me at the time. And then we went to Pizza Express afterwards, and he just sat on the little grown-up table just on my phone, and all his friends were at another table. And it was just really sad because I could have got it right and I didn't, and it wasn't his fault, and it was really hard. So he's, you know, if he's
your fault either, you do know that, right?
Yeah, just looking back, I can see it probably wasn't the best.
Yeah, you know better, you know, but you didn't know then. So yeah.
So I think for Casper, you know, take school out of the equation. There is still anxiety, particularly social anxiety. There is still demand avoidance, but it's magnified by, Nick can weigh in here, but I would say it's literally magnified by 1,000 when you add school into the equation.
Yeah, for sure. Really typical experience of PDAs. Like I've got families on like that I've worked with, and I've got families that I've known for years, and even just being able to say to a kid, you're never going back to school, you're never going back to that school, releases so much pressure for them. Obviously the challenge of that is you can't say that to them until you know that that's what the plan is and that's what you achieve. But I have seen massive differences in children and young people who are just told, you don't have to worry about that, it's not going to happen. Because just the notion of it's such a demand heavy environment. There are so many variables. You know, it's their brain is on fire from the moment they arrive in that setting often. So yeah, okay, all right.
That's really what I feel, and I said this to someone the other day, a mum who's also going through the same. They've done, I think I mentioned actually, they've done special school through HCP, and now that's failed as well. But I just said it's their brains are on fire.
Yeah,
it's literally that the brain's on fire. And
100%.
I also feel like they're a year ahead of us, and I'm not saying, I know everybody's different and I know every presentation is different, but my concern is that they're a year ahead of us and they are dealing with violence on a whole other level with this poor boy who's so traumatized by the special school he's been at. I just can't imagine putting my little one through that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I understand sometimes parents are kind of persuaded, I suppose, by professionals to, you know, give it a go, and that will be evidence that this doesn't work. But actually, in my experience, once you know what isn't going to work, it's not in anyone's interest to try it just to prove it isn't going to work. It's about evidencing that it won't work without actually trying to do it and putting your child through further distress. So yeah, absolutely. So what a couple of questions I suppose I want to ask you is, have you thought about what you would like it to look like for him? And has he expressed what he is interested in, keen on, wants to do, would like to engage in? Like, is he able to do that or not?
Nick, are you happy for me to keep talking? Okay, I'll carry on. So I'd say, going back to front, Casper, so we went to see, there's a charity near us called Greatwood, and they have retired racehorses, and he was definitely interested in doing something like that, going to help with the animals. They have goats and other things there as well, other animals. And so I think we haven't talked, because I don't want to kind of lay out, you know, heaven before him and then give him hell instead. I haven't really gone down the route with him of actually saying, if you don't go to school, what does it look like? Because I don't want him to come up with an amazing life for himself and then I go, oh, sorry, darling, that's not going to happen. We did go visit Greatwood the other day and he was engaged, and he was normally with Casper, you know, very quickly he'll either just completely shut down or he did refuse to get out of the car at the beginning, but once he was out of the car he did engage, and he was engaged the whole way through the visit. He didn't say, can we go now? Can we go now usually happens quite quickly.
Okay.
So
I'm not looking away from you. I'm just looking back at our messages.
Yeah,
Keep
no,
talking,
don't worry. So I think the thing with Casper is that he'd want to game a lot because that regulates him.
Yeah.
So to my mind, he's going to learn a lot of what his education is going to look like through a screen.
Yeah.
And through a fun, engaging screen. But like today, so he was really dysregulated this morning, and he called me just now after he's calmed down. He's called me on FaceTime and he said, Mummy, please just give me an hour of screen now. And then I will go outside, I'll go into the garden, I'll bounce the trampoline, I'll do some baking. So he was already, and these are the things that we always sort of, for us, are kind of like the thing I always use as the example is that he can learn weights and measures through baking, etc., etc. So there is alternative provision. So my friend who's already done the EHCP and the special school, etc., with the PDA son, she sent me the Wiltshire alternative provision spreadsheet, and I went through it all. And there are quite a few things that I think would work really well for Casper, like the retired racehorse charity. Also, there's a cooking school. It's like 35 minutes from us, and they do, I think it's either once a week or you just do it once a month. But also like Mind Jam, I've got him on the wait list for Mind Jam, and I think they've said January, and they sent me their, which I'm sure you already have, their list, their kind of PDF of how to get Mind Jam into an EHCP type thing. There's another Mind Jam type place, which I sent my friend Gemma the other day, which is in Berkshire, which is only, I think it's about 45-50 minutes from us. They do online, but they also do in-person mentoring if you can get the child to their actual place. And again, that's a lot to do with coding and kind of game design and things like that, which I thought Casper would be really into. So I think if I'm sort of going down the kind of Casper track, he's very inquisitive. He loves learning. He has a thirst for knowledge. He asks questions constantly. He's super bright. He thinks like all those PDA children, you know, he's absolutely thinking out the box and laterally and just fascinating. Like we got to London the other day and he said, how far ahead is London time-wise? And I was like, oh, it's the same time as Wiltshire. And he's like, but it can't be because it's, you know, and I was like, well, okay, fine. Actually, no, it is about 10 minutes ahead. But, you know, it's those sorts of things that he's learning probably more than most of the children that are sitting in school learning, you know, about Egypt across 2 weeks. He'll read a book, or we'll read a book together in Egypt, and he's already firing on all cylinders on it. So
what he needs is a vehicle to be able to access that kind of like interest-led learning, and a person to support him to do that. It's
exactly.
He's responded. He just to add, the school is not, we're pretty clear the school is not meeting his needs, but he is responding quite well to the one-to-one lady who's kind and gentle, and he likes her. And you know, there'd be moments like they had a session on, I think, was it water precipitation together, where water cycles, he was excited and engaged, and that all felt very kind of useful. So that sort of one-to-one setting is one that I think he can cope with and get something out of.
Okay.
To be combined with other things. I guess the other question in my mind at least is, in terms of what he needs or what we might ask for him, is whether that could or should be combined with any contact with the school setting at all, you know.
Yeah, because I think in our messages, go on, sorry, go ahead.
Whether there's just I guess I may be wrong with this, the bit that bothers me is about the lack of any social interaction at all, and if he's if he's at home in a one-to-one setting or doing the odd trips to things, then we're sort of perpetuating the cutoff from other people, as it were. And I just have mixed emotions on that, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's a concern for lots of parents, especially when you've got a child who is, like my child, much better in much smaller groups. Like, he has 2 friends that he's very close to, but for years he had really no friends, and didn't and doesn't do well in large groups, and never has and probably never will. The funny thing about it is that once we get into adulthood, that's not a problem and people don't worry too much about that. But as kids, we're expected to be able to get on with 30 other kids, regardless of whether we have anything in common with them or not, whether we like them, how they smell, all of that stuff, you know. But yeah, it is a common concern for parents, 100%. I don't want to invalidate it at all. I guess one of the things I could share with you in terms of for children who are PDA who I have got on EOTAS packages, they tend to, their relationships, their social kind of skills, I guess, seem to develop first from their relationships with their trusted adults. And then once they've learned with trusted adults, they can lift that and drop that onto relationships with their peers. But they don't generally tend to learn those skills by mixing with other children their own age. Because it's too volatile. It's too
it makes
unreliable.
So much sense. And I think my concern, Nick knows this, is that whilst he is sociable and he really likes his friends, the minute they load a demand on him, he will literally say, I hate Thomas.
Yeah.
You know, and that might then be the end of that friendship, because Thomas doesn't understand why Casper's saying he hates him.
Yeah.
And I think that for us there is this volatility to Casper, which is that he's so black and white with his friendships that, you know, it was literally like Thomas was ruining the play date because he had to leave. Therefore, I hate Thomas. And it wasn't that understanding. Actually, it's Thomas's mummy who's imposed an end time to this play date. Thank God Thomas had actually gone inside the house for a minute before Casper was going, I hate Thomas. So for me, I'm less concerned. I've said to Nick, if we go down the OTAS route, which I do think instinctively is the right thing for Casper, that we will arrange, you know, at least maybe once a week that a friend can come over just to have a gaming session with Casper, because the parallel play for him is definitely still the easiest form for him in terms of socializing. And what we did find in the summer was actually if we did two friends would come over, it did mean that Casper could then take a break, go up to his room and regulate without them, and they'd just carry on. If it gets more than that, then he gets very dysregulated within that group.
Yeah.
If they get
and I
all
think the other thing as
together.
well with because he's 10, right? Is he 10
He's
yet?
9. He's just turned 9.
Yeah. So he's still, I mean, like, I think we don't give our younger PDAs enough credit for this. You know, like, we expect quite a lot of them. I don't mean we as in you and Nick, I mean generally, we expect them to have a greater sense of themselves, their own ability, be able to have the emotional maturity and the vocabulary to express how they're thinking and feeling about things way more than other 9-year-olds would. You know, and I think it's something to be aware of, that as he grows, as he matures, with support to understand his own presentation, he will then have the vocabulary to be able to not have to scream in a friend's face, I hate you. He will be able to say things like, this is really tripping my demand avoidance, and I'm having a really strong reaction to it. I'm just going to take some time out. But that's a big ask for any child, particularly a 9-year-old. So I guess there's something that comes with, and I think that is why our PDAs are more comfortable at this age with adults, because adults can tolerate, you know, things that other 9-year-olds probably couldn't. So I think that's, you know, it's something I see play out for sure. And just to reassure you on that front. And also, I think the social thing for many autistic adults, let alone many autistic kids, our socializing looks very different to.
Yeah, definitely. I'm diagnosed autistic, and I can absolutely say.
I hardly ever go anywhere in real life.
Yeah, I would
All my
happily
relationships are
diagnose this.
online.
I'd happily stay at home, and and my mother-in-law thinks that I can only text. I won't even pick up the phone to her.
And someone rang me yesterday, someone that I know, and I texted them going, "Why are you ringing me?"
Yeah, exactly.
No,
What are you doing? Don't do that. Yeah, no, I think I'm less worried about the social side. I think Casper's going to find his way. And I also think he may get to 13, 14. And like you say, I'm not saying it's a good thing, the masking in the mainstream school, but I think by then we may find that there is a school that they get it better in 5 years' time, that by 14, 15, 16 GCSEs and A levels, he may well end up in a small, little
It's
London.
about his motivation as well. If the thing with PDA is if the reward is worth the demand, we're very good at working our way around those demands.
Yeah.
Just if the reward isn't sufficient, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and currently, what's the reward of being in school? There isn't really one, So, I mean, I don't mean, no, I do mean that. I do mean that. I mean, in terms of his personal reward, his personal motivation.
He loves what he made. The water cycle, he literally loves what he made. And if he was doing that every day, obviously it can't be every day, but if he was doing that sort of level every day, he would probably do an hour and a half every morning in school.
Yeah.
But, at the moment, we are literally paying an independent school to educate our son, and he's none of that he's accessing. And then we're paying, in addition, a one-to-one.
Yeah.
What I'm aware of, just to sort of slightly sidestep at the moment, is I'm obviously on your Facebook group, and I'm on several others, and I see parents who are talking about the packages they've got in place for EOTAS, and I'm conscious that most of them are talking about it running into like 100 to 150,000 pounds a year as a budget, whereas I'd sort of naively thinking about EOTAS was like, oh, what is it, maybe 30,000 a year at the most. But I'm aware that some people have someone coordinating it all, then they have a one-to-one tutor, then they have someone else who's doing something else, and it's like a really specialized specific thing, isn't it?
It does depend. Ours was only, I think our package was 18 grand.
Yeah, that's kind of where I sort of put it, kind of 18 to 30, thinking that's probably what the bracket was. But I was really astounded the other day when there was this kind of Facebook conversation going on. I was like, what? All these parents going, yeah, no, ours easily was 150,000 a year. And I'm like, oh my God, what did you have?
It does depend as well. Like I think if you've got, I self-managed my package. I didn't have anyone like overseeing it. I didn't have, so I didn't have that. So my costs were literally the cost of the provision rather than needing to pay someone to oversee all that provision. And I didn't have a lot of therapy. We only had OT. So, but some families, they'll have SALT, they'll have OT, they might have play therapy, so that all adds up, obviously. We had, because Theo was at GCSE level, so we had, I think, 6 hours of tutoring a week and 10 hours of learning support mentor, and that was it. So we didn't have a lot, and he wasn't 2-to-1 or anything like that. Our staffing costs were fairly low because they were, inverted commas, just tutors or just the learning support mentor.
Yeah.
So I think it's useful to know that if you need a package that big, then, if you can make a case for it, then great. But actually, if your package isn't as expensive, that works in your favor, because although it shouldn't be argued on cost, it is always something that they look at, Did you want to ask something, Nick?
I did. Wanted to thank you. I wanted to, and this is very helpful. I wanted to. We've got between now and the 7th of December.
Is your final evidence deadline.
We've got to make an argument for what Casper needs.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I'd love to understand how we might work together to get, if that's how we get to a position where we can articulate that in a compelling way, and us have confidence in it, if you like, because this is new for us. And then I guess the second question linked to that is, in your experience, of dealing with local authorities in a world which, in a country that still doesn't diagnose PDA and probably doesn't, understand it, what your experience is of, fighting this fight for kind of for packages that aren't mainstream school and aren't specialist schools, if you follow me.
Yeah, sure.
With the risk that they're, because clearly everything we've understood is that the system is probably inclined to say no, or to push back on that, because the default is just trying to put children into sort of affordable provision within kind of what they know. I'm not phrasing it very well, but
no, I understand exactly what you're saying. Well, I think I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the two things to address there is, in terms of your final evidence deadline. So you're just appealing. Are you appealing B, F, and I? Remind me. I apologize.
No, so we're not. So we've got, at the moment, we're not appealing anything. We don't have anything in place. So he's in the EHC needs assessment, which was approved without
assessment period.
Yeah, so we've had no need to appeal anything. They didn't turn him down for needs assessment. So we were told by the Senko at school, expect to hear back that it's a no when we put the request in, when we did the referral in the first place. And she said they'll come back with a no, then you need to appeal it, etc., etc. They came back with a yes. So we then went into that. Sorry, my screen's frozen.
All right, I think it's because I didn't put your letter on my screen.
So the letter went in via an advocate.
That was the 9th of October that you made the request for an assessment, right? That's what
I
sent me.
think it went in. Did it go in the 9th of October, or was it earlier than that? I can't even think now.
Anyway, the 7th of December. The 7th of December is our deadline.
Yes.
To articulate, to give our view. Yeah.
Parent views.
Exactly. So the run of events so far is at the end of October, I heard from them, got a call to say he's been approved for the EHC needs assessment. They said that the only, so this is our lead worker, the only feedback from the panel had been that they felt we needed an LA sanctioned OT assessment, even though we've had a private assessment done last December. So I've put the referral through Wiltshire Children's Services for that, but I've heard nothing back at all.
It won't come back.
And then Samantha Trowbridge, who was helping us get our initial request in, so she helped us with that original letter that went in, she suggested that she felt that our EdPsych needed to do a kind of addendum to her report, because it hadn't been strong enough in terms of actual provision required, and also his needs have changed a lot since June till now. So she's seeing him next week on the 23rd, and she also suggested, Samantha, that we needed an SLT report. Casper has had SLT input since he was in year 1 or 2, but the school fired the SLT and they haven't replaced her. And she didn't pick up on anything in terms of him being autistic or anything else. So there was never an assessment done. She just saw him because he couldn't pronounce his R's and he pronounced them as W. And so that's the only reason she was seeing him. And then as soon as he got the diagnosis, she said, oh, I can see the rigid thinking now, and I can see this and I can see that. And it's like she was playing catch up. And then the school literally let her go and they haven't replaced her. So there's no provision at school in terms of OT or SLT or any support like that. We've just got the Senko 3 days a week. Okay. And obviously our one-to-one who we're paying. So the process at the moment is we're in the EHC needs assessment. We haven't had to appeal anything. There is no EHCP draft, which obviously we'll expect around January.
Yeah.
So we've got EdPsych doing an update next week. We've got a new SLT coming in a week later to do a first assessment of him, both of which are going to take place at home because he's not in the school environment enough for it to be a true picture of him. And then obviously we've got the 7th of December as our absolute backstop to get any letter in from us to back up anything.
Okay, so what we need between now and the 7th of December is a look at what evidence we currently have and what parental position is in regards to EOTAS. So the legal test for EOTAS is that it would be inappropriate for a child or young person to be educated in school or college setting. And we fleshed that out based on what we've discussed this morning.
Yeah.
And I can provide you with some notes on this. The other thing that we need to think about is the SLT an NHSLT? An NHS SLT?
It's a private.
It's private. Okay.
I don't know if she does NHS as well, but we've had to
yours.
take privately. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't get anything back from Wiltshire Children's Services. Our daughter's in the kind of CAMS referral waiting list, and she's quite seriously in need mental health wise with her anxiety. And again, it's just this kind of waiting game.
And the other thing about them saying that they need an LA approved OT, that's rubbish. Like the advice of a qualified assessing professional is the advice of a qualified assessing professional, regardless of whether they're independent or NHS, in even more so with OTs, because lots of OTs work independently and in the NHS.
Yeah.
So,
and there is a case law precedent for that.
Yeah,
isn't
there
there?
is. Yeah, there is. So what I suppose where we're at the minute is that I know that when we spoke on the messages the other day, we were talking about, do we think that potentially the LA will name the existing setting and expect the existing setting to put stuff in place? In all honesty, it's highly unlikely that for a new EHCP, the local authority would name a private setting, and they would be more likely to try and name a mainstream because of the cost. So I think what we need to make sure that we're doing is that the evidence that you provide is really clear about the reason why that would not be appropriate. You know, the evidence from reports and from history that states that he couldn't cope in a large mainstream classroom even, and because he's not even coping at the moment in a small one-to-one basis in a very bespoke approach.
Is it more likely that they'd want to name a mainstream special school?
That is more likely than them naming a prep. Yeah.
I mean, more likely than them naming a mainstream primary.
It depends what your reports say. So one of the things for when your ed psych comes is really kind of pinning them down on making some recommendations around things like class size, for example. Because if you aren't able to pin them down on that, and if they're not clear about that, that will kind of pretty much give the LA a backdoor route into a mainstream. The other issue, though, is that, and you'll know this more from speaking to people locally, is that just because they say it's going to be a special school does not mean that there's an appropriate special school. So, and you won't know that until you've got your draft back, until then, and then they're then consulting. But have you got a bit of a handle on what the options may be in terms of special schools locally? What you think might be on the table?
So we've set up 2 visits already, and I've got a third to set up. There's very little provision near us in terms of local special schools. And I think I mentioned, like, Casper gets car sick beyond a certain point anyway. The other thing is he won't engage beyond. He'll do, if we managed a week getting him into a car for half an hour every morning and half an hour in the afternoons, after that week he'll be absolutely, no way am I getting back in that car.
Have you got his car sickness evidenced anywhere?
No, but I give him Phenergan for long journeys. I also give him Phenergan to go to sleep at night.
It's all right, we do what we do. Have you got...
do you mind if I ask a question? What I was trying to get at with my question is, I may be wrong on this, but I can see that we can, a path to putting together a quite, a good case that he should not be in a school setting, mainstream or specialist. I think we can, I feel reasonably confident we can prove the negative, if you like.
Your question is, what do we then ask for?
Well, because my understanding of the process is we've got to be as specific as possible on need, outcome, and how to achieve the outcomes. And although Claire has done some brilliant research, I don't feel qualified to sort of to feel totally confident about kind of what we put for the positive, as it were, in terms of
100%.
what we asked for. As if
100%. Let me, before I forget to ask you this question, I'm going to talk about package in just a second, but let me just ask you this question. Can you get an appointment with a GP or a medical professional and have his car sickness evidenced? Okay, cool. That's what you could do with doing. So with regards to a package, so the way that it will work with you is that they're asking you for parental input currently. What they're asking you for there is what will go into section A of his plan. So that is family views, child's views. When they're working through an EHCP, they have that 14-week period where, sorry, I close my eyes when I'm concentrating. I have that 14-week period when they gather together all the information from assessing professionals, or they engage professionals in new assessments, and then they use that to produce you a draft. In section B of your draft, you've got needs. In section F of your draft, you've got provision to meet those needs. At that point, is really when you would be throwing in stuff around, okay, well, now that we've got all of these recommendations about what this provision would look like and what this need would look like, it's difficult to backwards engineer a package beyond saying we don't think that education otherwise in a school, that education in a school is suitable right now. We are going to be making a case for education otherwise than at school, and we are going to ask for a personal budget. Now, what we can do is we can kind of top line that, but until we've got the professional advice on what his needs are, what the outcomes would be, and what the provision to meet those outcomes would look like, we're a little bit running blind. So yeah. I think what we need to do is in section A, you've got a Marble Run membership, right?
Yeah.
You have. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the Marble Run, have you watched the section A for PDA webinar yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so there's a section A for PDA webinar, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. It helps you to put together parental views for that section of the EHCP that is PDA informed, because linking back to the thing about the PDA, and I'm going to come back to the packaging in a second, but linking back to the thing about not having PDA recognised and people pushing back against that, although we have difficulties with saying to professionals, well, they are PDA, we need a PADA informed approach. If we have their needs outlined as high levels of demand avoidance, difficulty engaging because of X, Y, Z, that describes PDA.
Yeah.
But in section A, you can say whatever you like. So in section A, you flesh out the case for our child needs a PDA informed, low demand informed approach.
Yeah.
When we get to having a draft of the plan or having your reports back, and because you've got private reports, you should actually see the reports before anyone else does. We can use those to then inform what we think an EOTAS package might look like. But what will happen is, as part of the needs assessment, they're looking at, does this child need an EHCP? At the end of this, they'll go, yes, they do, and here's a draft.
Yeah.
At that point is when you would fully flesh out what your EOTAS request is. Yeah. Because until you've got all of those needs identified and those outcomes identified, you are a little bit,
exactly
firing blind.
Just on the dates, we've got 7th of December is the deadline to get our final kind of evidence in, as it were. Then they've given us 7th of January is if the LA decides not to issue a My Plan, we must let you know by this date.
Yeah.
And then the 4th of December, if the LA agrees to issue a My Plan, this is the deadline by which the final plan must be issued at the end of the process. But that seems to be shorter than the 14 weeks.
What date is that? Sorry, that final?
4th of February. So we've got 7th of December, 7th of January.
It's 20 weeks from the date that you made the initial request.
Yeah.
And then they have to, which I think your letter said 9th of October. And then they have 6 weeks to grant a needs assessment. But if they do that earlier, they've still got 20 weeks from when you made the request. So your deadline for the plan being issued should be 20 weeks from your initial request.
Yeah. I'm just going back to sorry, carry on.
All right.
No, so the date, the request for EHCP went in on the 18th of September.
Oh, I'm looking at a letter from the...
That was Education Advocacy Wiltshire Send Service. Dear Sir, Madam, request for education, healthcare and needs assessment is dated the 18th of September.
Okay, apologies. I was looking at a different letter.
No, don't worry. So that was that. I think the 9th of October is the one I sent in.
Yes, it is.
Which was my kind of additional evidence type letter.
But the original request for an assessment was dated the 18th
of September.
And what date did you have? Did you have something in writing from them saying we are going to grant an assessment?
Yeah, so
what date was that?
The request went in 18th September. The letter is the 26th of October that came back saying we are writing to confirm the decision made by the LA that we will carry out an EHC needs assessment.
Okay, so 18th of September, 1 sec. 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So according to my dates, they should issue a final plan by the 5th of February.
Yeah, that's what they've given us, the 4th of February.
Right, that's right then.
So then they've got, so in that letter, it's then they've got the, if you wish to provide any additional information, please do so in writing within 6 weeks from the date of this letter. So I've assumed,
and that's your 7th,
on the 26th, that's the 7th, although is it the 6th? I don't know how they work the is it literally straight on? So
You don't have an actual deadline to meet for that. There are no statutory deadlines for parents, but I would work to that date anyway.
yeah, so that would be
And for that part, the bit that's going to mainly inform that is your Section 8 PDA webinar.
yeah.
And that will take you through what to include, what language to use. I will also, when I run your reports, I've got a there's a really good, I don't know if you've come across it yet, but there's a really good EHCP guide from the PDA Society.
Yeah, I've got that.
About the use of PDA informed language, and
Yeah.
And when we get your draft, we can throw that through the tool I've got to check that it's all PDA informed.
Okay.
And when you get your reports from your professionals, we can do the same. So I can put your report through the tool that I've got. It's an AI assisted tool, but it basically picks out for specification and quantification, but it also picks out whether it's trauma informed and
sounds very helpful.
low demand and all that jazz. It's a good piece of kit. It saves me about 12 hours work.
Amazing.
That sounds amazing.
About this now.
I love that. I need something like that. I was going to say, so we've got a call on Monday. We've got a call next Monday, and then we've got a call on the 4th. And I kind of structured it that way because I thought, oh, well, sorry, that's Casper. Hang on.
You can answer it, it's fine.
Just going to give him extra time on his iPad, and then he will just disappear again for a minute. Oh, it's back. Sorry. Can you hear that music, or is it just me? He won't stop calling until I give him more time. So I'm just gonna.
Has he got like a? Have you got like a thing where you can turn it on and turn it off for his screen access?
Yeah. So just to say, so what the reason I structured the calls this way is I thought on Monday we could talk about, if not that I'm going to steer our educational psychologist as to what to say. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to tell him. Darling, I've given you half an hour more, okay?
Mama, can I have a bit more time?
You can, darling. I've given you half an hour. It should switch on now. I have, yeah. If it doesn't work, put a request through, okay? Okay. Okay. So I did the 20th, thinking that we could then just, because the ed site, she did a very, I mean, you have the report because it's part of the letter, that the request that went in, but Samantha's immediate response to the, in terms of what we needed, was she hasn't given any sense of provision in terms of what's needed, what's required, the hours required, etc., etc. So
that's what your EP should do on the back of next week, though.
Exactly. So I was going to say is, if we have the call with you on Monday, you've already mentioned obviously class size is crucial to be put through that report, but if there's other things, can we discuss that on Monday in terms of me saying, please, can you make sure in your report you have said
100%. And I think it's don't be kind of like shy about telling them what you need them to recommend.
Yeah.
Kid, you know, I think sometimes we have people do EP assessments and then afterwards they're like, and they didn't get this and they didn't get that, and they're like, did you tell them?
Yeah.
Like,
It seems very, the minute I mentioned, because when she saw Casper in the summer, she went in off the back of, we booked her, but she went in through school and I only met her for 5 minutes and we didn't then have a catch up at all. And then the report came through. As soon as I sent an update saying, you know, Casper's basically not been in school, he's making it in 1 hour a day with a 1-to-1, that's it. And he's PDA. She was like, oh my God, that's a whole other picture. Yes, you need an update. So I think she's pretty clued up. She sent me a form to fill in on the PDA side, a kind of PDA questionnaire for her before she sees him next week.
right.
So assuming that she's clued up, she knows what she's looking at.
And her brief earlier in the year will have been very different. Now she's being briefed to write a report for an EHC needs assessment. So.
And I said to her in the email at EOTAS, and she said, she came back saying PDA plus EOTAS, yes, that makes a lot of sense. So I think she's on that page. I just want to make sure, obviously, that on Monday, you know, the three of us can basically discuss exactly what she needs. And I will watch all the webinars before that too.
You don't have to watch them all, but watch the EOTAS 101 one.
Yeah.
The other, if you do want to kind of like geek out, the other one that's worth looking at is the how to design your EOTAS package.
Okay, perfect.
And there is a spreadsheet that goes with that you can then populate with when you've got the information with what recommendations are made, and you can pull it across and there's budget lines for it and all that jazz. And that's as an attachment to that webinar. So you can kind of share the load. But the other thing, I suppose, is just obviously we've got OT advice coming. No, we've got OT advice already. We've got SALT advice coming. We've got EP advice. just thinking about his presentation and his difficulties and making sure we're evidencing everything. You mentioned the car sickness. That's something to have probably a GP just make note of.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if you just go and see the GP and say, can you make any recommendations for things we could do for car sickness? And can you write a letter to say that I've been to speak to you about car sickness?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
What else do you know about him that you feel is not captured or evidenced through professional advice, that is kind of like I know that we've got other assessments coming up, but is there anything that you can think of? What's his sleep like?
Terrible. Without the Phenergan, it's terrible.
Okay.
But the doctor, that's registered with the doctor already, because she's agreed on the Phenergan. She hasn't prescribed it, but she's agreed it.
So when you see the doctor, what I can do, and I'm saying it out loud so I don't forget, because then my AI will tell me to do it, is I can send you a kind of like a crib sheet to give to your doctor to say, this is what I want you to write me in a letter. Okay. You'll probably have to pay for the letter, you usually do, but it's normally like 20 quid, 30 quid, something like that. It's probably the best letter you'll ever get in your life, because you can use it for all times. It is also at that point worth, have they got it on his records at the GP surgery that he's diagnosed autistic?
Yes, they should do.
Okay, so double check that.
Yeah.
Just in case they haven't, because sometimes with private assessments, it hasn't filtered through.
Yeah.
If that is the case, in with that kind of like letter, you can have them say again that that they are aware he is autistic, and they are aware he experiences anxiety in certain situations, and that accommodations need to be made. And that will also give you a little bit of waterproofing around, well, you know, how are we supposed to believe you that your child can't go to school? Because that's the kind of shit that people make up, obviously. Okay, so I'll put that on an email for you as well. What else was I going to say to you? There was something else.
Heidi, what should we be saying to the school at the moment? Because the authority will speak to them, won't they? So what should we be encouraging? As I think Claire's given you a pretty good intimation, the school is not really on it. It's just not there. You know, this isn't where, you know, they're not particularly qualified.
And their letter says something along the lines of,
they'll take some steer from us, I think. So it's just a question what we should be encouraging them to emphasize.
I think you can use them as a good piece of evidence. I think what you need to get from them, if we haven't already in the paperwork that either I've got or you've got already, is something that outlines what they have tried, what hasn't worked, what they are trying that still isn't working, and what they think might work. I mean, the might work is a little bit kind of like, but, you know, give them the opportunity to express an opinion. But I think one of the things that is helpful, again, is have them highlight his difficulties in a classroom setting, have them highlight his sensory differences, and kind of like give them a steer on taking the position that I think that really probably you need to be pushing them to say, we actually don't think we can meet need. Even with an EHCP, we don't think we can meet need, because we don't have, you know, the level, we don't have what he needs without him being isolated. Would be my thing.
I don't think that would be a problem. I think in our last meeting, Senko slightly intimated that that's where they expect to be.
I think it's kind of like, you can use it to your advantage rather than just having her say, oh, we can't meet need. You can have that as like an exit interview towards her detailing why, and that being good evidence for the EHCP and the case of the OTAS. Oh, there's someone at my door. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Shush.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, postman. I
No, that's
apologize.
Okay.
Yes. So go on. What we'll do is let's just flesh out what we're going to do. I'm going to send you some notes from what I've already got. I've started on it anyway, but I'll finish it off for you. I will send you something to wave under the doctor's nose. I'll send you a summary of what we've spoken about today. You're going to look into a doctor's report, a doctor's letter. You'll get outline of what we've talked about in terms of current setting. On Monday, we can talk about EP. You can access the Section A for PDA and the How to Build an EOTAS Request webinars.
Can I just ask the GP?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got it because it's really hard to get appointments. I'd already booked one. You have to book 6 weeks ahead, and I've booked one for the 11th of December. Do I need that GP letter before the 7th of December to go in, or does that need to be ready and waiting between the 7th of December and January, February?
Is this EP or GP, did you say?
That's the GP.
Yeah, no, you'll be fine to put it in after then.
Yeah, so if I get the call on the 11th of December, I'll have that letter hopefully kind of by mid-December from her.
Yeah, I think you can feed it in at like, as long as it's with, even if we get a draft back from the LA and you go, oh, we've got this GP advice, actually that needs to go in. When you get the draft, you get a fortnight minimum to feed back on the draft. So at that point,
perfect,
you can pick through.
Yeah, so I'm okay on that timing.
Yeah,
because it's so hard to get
I know, tell me about it. It's an absolute
on the EP, we'll talk on the we'll talk on Monday, on our call on Monday, in terms of that. We will watch webinars before that. But also, would it help, because the OT hasn't seen him, she's very good, she hasn't seen him since December last year. Would it help, because we're in the, obviously I haven't heard back from Wiltshire Children's Services on that OT that they've requested, would it help to boost his
new advice
with an update from the OT, so she could come back and do a kind of update assessment and just do another addendum to her report?
Yeah, it would be helpful to have updated OT advice.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Does that give you enough to go on?
Yeah, it does.
We had a lot to cover this morning, but
does
it feel okay?
Absolutely, it's so helpful. I feel completely lost without you, so thank you, Heidi.
That's all right. That's okay. So what I'll do is I have got some desk time this afternoon and also tomorrow. Don't panic if you haven't heard from me, but if you want to remind me at lunchtime tomorrow, I do not mind. So that's totally fine. But I will get something to you so that you've got some stuff to look over the weekend, and then we'll chat again on Monday.
Thank you so much. Can I just check we've got the call in at the right time on Monday?
Yeah, let's check. Hang on.
I've got 1 o'clock.
That's probably why I thought today was 1 o'clock. Hang on a second. That's February, November
20th, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, yes.
And then I've got the following one, our third one with you, on the 4th at 11.
Let's have a look. 4th of December, 11. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you both, and we'll chat some more on Monday.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.